Welcome to Your Yes-Filled Life. I'm your host, Brenda Winkle, educator, healer, speaker, guide, and fierce advocate for your yes. I help sensitive and successful men and women find, reclaim, and live from their full embodied yes. Through empowering you to understand your energetic hygiene, establish healthy boundaries, and heal your nervous system, you'll be able to create your yes-filled life and move through your days with more freedom, more ease, and more joy. You'll hear inspiring stories of people who found their full-bodied yes, thought leaders who pursued their own dreams and are living life on their terms, and learn new ways to find the courage, joy, ease, and freedom to more fully step into your yes-filled life. Say no to the good so you can say yes to the great. Join me on this journey to discover your yes-filled life. Whether you're looking to break free from the golden handcuffs, start a new business, find your dream job, or simply live with more intention and mindfulness, I've got you covered. Let's explore the possibilities together and make your dreams a reality. Ready? Let's do this. Let's get you to your yes-filled life. Breathe in the power of intuition. Unlock your inner wisdom with breath work. What would it be like to stop overthinking? What would your life look like if you felt clarity and ease? How would your life change if your nervous system felt regulated and you could access a state of calm even when there are storms all around you? Get ready to unlock the incredible power of your intuition and connect with your inner wisdom on a deeper level and access a deeper sense of calm. You are invited to join a transformative journey with an exclusive PDF guide and video series designed to amplify your success and well-being in this free 4-part video series, Breathwork to Strengthen and Trust Your Intuition. This valuable free resource is designed specifically for high achievers and successful people just like you who are committed to personal and professional growth, aligning with your desires and embracing your own wisdom within. You get to watch at your own pace when you get instant access to the entire series. Created for high achievers on the go, each video is less than 15 minutes. You'll also have access to a PDF guide with various breathwork patterns so that you can take breathwork with you anywhere. To get your instant access to this free 4-part series and PDF guide, go to brendawinkle.com/breathe. That's brendawinkle.com/BREATHE. Hello, and welcome to Your Yes-Filled Life. I'm your host, Brenda Winkle. I am so glad you're here today. Today on the podcast, we are diving in to something that's really been on my mind and heart, specifically this week. And that is a question. Are you overriding your nervous system? How you might know, what it might be costing you, and ways that you can shift it. Now, before we dive into that, let me just give you a little bit of background about what's present for me today. So I was just in Boise, Idaho, attending the Idaho American Choral Directors Association's fall conference. They flew me in to speak on diversity, equity, and inclusion because I'm the Northwest Region's chair of the American Choral Directors Association for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. And also the Idaho chapter of ACDA, American Choral Directors Association, brought me in to teach breathwork. I have a special signature talk that I've created for educators because breathwork can really help support educators and the people that they serve, whether those are students or adults. So I went to the conference and I got to reconnect with people who I have known and loved for almost 2 decades. And it was so soul filling to see all of the people I know and love in Idaho that are associated with music or were I was able to connect with. I missed a lot of you. So I know a lot of my listeners are in Boise. Shout out to you. And And I'm sorry I wasn't able to connect with all of you, but I did talk to one of my friends who's also a listener on the podcast. And I just want to give a shout out to Becky. You made my day. I loved hearing you sing and I loved our conversation. And I'm so glad that you're listening to the podcast. And it really meant a lot for me to have that quick conversation with you. So, being back in the same place where I lived for 17 years and really integrated in the same field that I had for 26 years, it made me aware of how differently I handle things now compared to how I handled things even as recently as 2 years ago. And it made me aware of two things. One, I became aware of how often I used to override my own nervous system. And two, how common it is and how many of us do this, no matter what field you are in, but especially if you are in a caregiving field like education or medical professionals. But I really think that this extends beyond the caregiving fields. I think that this is something our society in general is dealing with. We're overriding our nervous systems. And I would venture to say it's more common than not. The problem is overriding your nervous system is costing you vitality, creativity, joy, and well being, not to mention the impact that it's having on your physical health. So, in today's episode, I'm going to share with you ways that you can begin to recognize when you're overriding your nervous system, what signals to watch for and feel for, and I'm going to give you ways to begin that shift so that you're always honoring your own needs, even when you're working or parenting, taking care of aging parents, or just hanging out with friends. So, here are some things that you might be doing or noticing if or when you're overriding your nervous system. And these are cues that you are either reaching or even over capacity of what your nervous system is capable of handling. Now, why is that a problem? Well, here's the thing. If we override our nervous system's capacity, we are automatically living in a stress state. Because when we're over our nervous system's capacity, our nervous system has to compensate in some way. And the way that our nervous system does that is by flooding the body full of stress managing hormones. So we see an increase in adrenaline, we see an increase in cortisol. And when we have those particular hormones flooding our system, and especially in a way that we don't necessarily mitigate them with the dopamine or the serotonin feel good hormones, so they're just kind of running amok in our systems, we have elevated blood pressure. We have a feeling state of stress. We have a quickness to anger or to feel overwhelmed. We also have inflammation in our bodies. And so we'll talk more about that maybe another time. But here's the big thing I want you to know before we even dive in. If you're constantly overriding your nervous system and you're ignoring your cues that you or your body are over capacity, it is costing you. It's jeopardizing your wellness, your well being, your mental health. It's jeopardizing and adding stress to your relationships, to your success, to your happiness, and of course, to your physical health. So, one of the ways that you might begin to get curious around if you're overriding your nervous system is just to let me set the stage. So, if you're someone who has a lot of expectations on yourself, either inwardly or because of the role or position that you have, there's a potential that you might be overriding your nervous system, especially if you have a lot of time bound obligations. You might be someone who is finding yourself saying things like any one of these five things. Number one, I've got to keep my energy up right now. Ooh, how many of us have said that? My hand is up for sure. Number two, I need a cup of coffee to keep going. or insert whatever it is that's going to give you a little bit of energetic boost. Maybe that's coffee, or maybe that's sugar, or whatever it is. So just inwardly or outwardly raise your hand if that's you. My hand is also up. I've been there. Number 3, I'm eating my feelings right now. Yeah, it's been said that 80% of women, and not all of my listeners are women, so apologies to you men, but 80% of women have a disordered relationship with food. Now, that could mean a lot of different things. The lens with which I'm using right now is using food to self soothe. So, if you've ever used food to self soothe, it could be a sign that you are exceeding the capacity of your nervous system. And my hand's also up for that one. Been there. Number 4, I don't know how much more of this I can do. Or another version of this might be, I don't know how much more of this I can take. Is your hand up on this one? My hand is. And number 5, this, insert whatever it is, situation, job, role, concert, season, whatever it is, this is taking a toll on me. Is your hand up for that one? Mine is. At one point in my life, my hand would have been up for all 5 of those statements that I found myself saying. So, I've given you 2 ways so far to self-diagnose if you are overriding your nervous system. Number 1 was you have a lot of expectations inwardly or outwardly and time-bound obligations. Number 2, you find yourself saying any of those 5 statements. Number 3, you rely on numbing behaviors like drinking, eating too much, eating sugar for comfort, zoning out on Netflix, not because you like it, but because you just don't have capacity for anything else. So if you've ever numbed, that could be a sign that you're overriding your nervous system. Number 4, maybe you have a short fuse. You can go from calm-ish to escalated just with the snap of a finger. That's a sign you're overriding your nervous system. Why? Because you've got all that adrenaline and cortisol running through your body. So you're already in a stress state. So it doesn't take much to put you over the edge into an angry outburst. And I guess it'd be number 6. You find yourself thinking things like, I just have to get through this, whatever that might be. Maybe it's, I just have to get through this soccer season for my kids. Or maybe it's, I just have to get through this board meeting. I just have to make it through the next board meeting and then my term is up. Or maybe it's, I just have to get through this season or this concert or this event or this season of life. If you've ever said that, that's a sign you're overriding your nervous system. Now, I want to make sure that you know we're not making any of these things bad. You're not wrong for doing any of these things. That's a coping mechanism. Coping mechanisms are what we need to cope. They're a good thing ultimately, but they're also a sign that there's something that we need to cope with. So we have a lot of love for them. Now, let me just talk to you briefly about why this is so important to me. So I want you to picture this. It was the first day of school in 2019. I had been a teacher for a long, long time, and I knew how important it was to get to school on the first day. I had a stomach ache, a really serious stomach ache that actually made it difficult to stand up straight. But it was the first day of school. I wasn't about to miss it. So I went in to the building and I went directly to the school nurse, which is where many teachers go for their medical care. And I explained to the nurse what I was experiencing. And she said, if you still feel this way at lunch, why don't you come on back, especially if you're not able to eat? We would need to know. So I went into my classroom and I began to teach. I had 6 classes that morning. By the 3rd class, I found a stool and I was sitting on the stool with my heels up on one of the rungs of the stool so that I could put my elbows on my knees and teach while seated and doubled over because my abdominal pain was really bad. I had a very difficult time standing up straight, and I didn't want to scare the kids by not being able to stand up straight. And so I finished the morning, taught my 6 classes, went in to eat lunch, and literally could not eat. So I went back to the nurse's office. And while I was there, the assistant principal came in. She stuck her head in and she asked what was going on. And the nurse was explaining to her that I was having symptoms of what she thought could be something similar to gallbladder, bladder, or liver, but that she was recommending that I leave to go to urgent care. And I was objecting because it was the first day of school. You can't miss the first day of school. And I was justifying all the reasons why I had to stay in the building when the assistant principal said, "Hey, this is not the hill we're going to die on today." And so she sent me to urgent care and we canceled music classes for the rest of the day. Well, I went to urgent care and the doctor there, he was kind. He didn't take what I said very seriously in the sense that he was not at all concerned. He took some blood tests and thought maybe it was stress or gas or, first day of school nerves kind of a thing. So he took some tests and took the blood work and sent me home. I'd been home for about 30 minutes when the phone rang and it was this urgent care doctor. He said, "How close are you to the nearest emergency room?" And I sort of took a deep breath and said, "Well, I guess I can get there in about 15 minutes." And he said, "Yeah, you probably should go, but maybe you shouldn't be the one that drives." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Why?" And he said that I had elevated liver enzymes suggesting liver involvement. I absolutely had a wicked case of pancreatitis, and they thought there were some other complicating factors, and I needed to get to the emergency room. So I called my mom, and she drove me. And when I was there, no one would make eye contact with me. And that's how you know something really bad is happening when the medical staff and the ER, when you've been called ahead, isn't making eye contact with you. So I grew up in northwestern Nebraska in a tiny little town at the corner of upper Nebraska, right below South Dakota, right next to Wyoming. The tiny town is called Shadron. And I grew up being wide open, highly sensitive, very intuitive. I could walk into any room and read the room instantly. I could tell what the emotional state of everyone who was in the room, and I made it my job to go to the most dysregulated nervous system in the room to try to help them regulate so that I would feel better in my own body because it was physically literally upsetting to me when someone was upset because I could feel their discomfort, whether that was anger or sadness or whatever it is. So I made it my job, even as a young child, to make sure that I was taking care of the people all around me. And I felt better. I liked it. I took great pride in it. That turned into some really major people pleasing behaviors. In fact, I made people pleasing kind of like my full time job. I could anticipate your needs before you even knew you had them. And I was so proud of myself for doing that. And so I used my intuitive abilities, I used my natural empathy, and I people pleased all the time. At the beginning, I did it because it made me feel better. And then as it continued, I did it because I didn't know how to stop. It was like a giant snowball, just gathering momentum and gathering momentum. And once you've done it for so long, how do you stop? Well, back to that day that I was admitted to the hospital, I realized I was not only going to miss the first day of school, but I was going to miss my auditions for Opera Idaho children's choruses. I was also not only going to miss the first day of school, but I was going to miss the first several weeks of school because I was so seriously ill that they had to wait for my pancreatitis to heal before they could even operate. I required major emergency surgery, but they couldn't operate because I was too unstable, because I had such bad pancreatitis that it was life threatening. So I stayed in the hospital for 5 days with nothing by mouth, no food, no drink, just hooked up to an IV while my pancreas healed enough for me to have surgery. When I missed the auditions and I missed the first 2 weeks of school, the person inside of me that had been used to hustling and used to people pleasing was inwardly and honestly outwardly screaming. I wanted to be there more than anything. And then you know what I realized? Everything went on without me. Somebody covered for me at the auditions at Opera Idaho. A substitute who didn't even teach music came in and created lesson plans because I'd hired her so many times the year before that she knew my systems. She knew how I operated things, and she was able to get the year kicked off. My co-teacher who shared my room helped the substitute. And while I do think they missed me, everything went on fine without me. And it was one of those moments where I really had to look within, and I was thinking to myself, "Wait a minute, I'm, like, literally on the verge of killing myself with all of this work, ignoring the physical symptoms," because let's be clear, it wasn't the first time my stomach had hurt. It had been hurting off and on for months, but I didn't listen. I just kept overwriting. I just kept saying, I think, maybe I'll sleep a little bit extra this weekend, or maybe I'll just, rest tonight. But it was always in the future. It was never now. I just kept overwriting the symptoms when they were whispering until once, once they were screaming at me, I could no longer ignore them. So, you know how COVID came in March 2020? Well, I would never have wished for COVID. But honestly, it kind of saved me because it brought everything to a screeching halt. So when the world shut down, that was the first time I had rested in years. I was still working, I was still teaching remotely, but I wasn't able to hustle and grind because the world had shut down. So again, I would never wish for COVID, and I would never wish COVID on anyone. And it really put me onto the path that I'm in now. Because when I was forced to slow down, I was able to recognize how far I had gone away from center and how much I was constantly overriding my own nervous system, constantly ignoring my own needs, whether they were physical, emotional, or mental. And once that momentum stopped, I was able to course correct. And now, now, you know, 4 years later, I am healthy, I'm happy, I'm grounded, I'm balanced, and I support sensitive and successful men and women, helping them to set better boundaries, helping them to heal and regulate their nervous systems, and helping increase their capacity for full capacity living to create their yes filled lives. And it is so rewarding. So after I moved to Oregon, I realized all I could think about was helping other people, helping other parents, helping other adults. Because for the last 26 years prior to 2022, I had helped the kids. And as much as COVID helped me because it gave me the break I desperately needed, it also was really, really difficult for most of the families that I taught. And I recognized that I needed to help other families heal their nervous systems so they could quit overriding their own their own capacity. And so now I work with people one-on-one. I speak at events. I teach breath work in corporations. And I also have a group coaching program called Yes Academy, which is amazing because we have healing, we have recorded modules, we have live calls with hot seats. But that's not the point. That's not the point of today's podcast. Today's podcast is all about how we can help you to stop overriding your nervous system, to stop overriding the little whispers that say, hey, I need a break, or hey, something's wrong here, or hey, I'm tired. So, here are some of the things that I discovered. I have 3 discoveries that I made in the course of doing this work and healing from my own overriding nervous system. Here's number 1. Number 1 is no one is coming to rescue you or relieve you. You are the only person who can save you. No one understands your situation like you, and no one can see the possible solutions like you can. And when it comes to your bandwidth, your time, your health, your energy, your capacity, only you know what you can handle. The moment that you begin to take radical responsibility is also the moment that you're going to access the truest freedom in your life. Why? Because the moment you realize that you have the ability and the responsibility to really create the life you want, everything unlocks. What's that mean? Well, if things are going well, that's because of you. If things are not going as well, that could also be because of you. Why? Because you're taking radical responsibility for the things that are showing up for you. And once you come to face the fact that no one is coming to rescue you, it's up to you to rescue yourself. That's the moment you reclaim your power. And it's literally game changing. Number 2, energy has no walls. The energy that you have when you create something is the energy that people feel when they interact with your creation. So that means that if you're in a funk, feeling sad or scarcity or anger when you're creating the email that you're about to send, the receiver of the email will feel and sense that energy. Think about how many times you've gotten a text on your phone and the words don't match the energy behind it, and you know it. And you can say, I'm getting a vibe from this. Or maybe you say, I have a feeling that she's mad. You're interpreting the energy with which that text was created. It happens to all of us all the time because energy has no walls. So if you're getting ready to apply for that job, you want to make sure that you're feeling expansive and joy and possibility before you start to create the resume and the cover letter. Because if you're feeling like Eeyore, oh, woe is me, when you create that letter or that resume, no one's going to hire you. It's repelling. That energy literally repels people. Why? Well, because of quantum physics. I mean, it's not because of quantum physics, although it is, but quantum physics can help us understand. Energy literally has no walls. We are all mostly energy. So if we're creating from an energy of depletion or scarcity or lack or anger or whatever it is, that's the energy that's getting attached to our creation, whether that's the application for the job or the text asking a friend to hang out or the email to your boss or when you speak to your kids. Energy has no walls. So number 1 was no one is coming to rescue you or relieve you. You are the only person who can save you. And number 2, energy has no walls. Which takes us to number 3. Your physical body has an actual capacity. This does not make you weak. or less than. It makes you human. So I love changing the context of things as we look at situations. So if you have a car that is driving down the road, are watching, hopefully, the gas tank. And you can watch the gas tank go from full down to three-quarters of a tank, down to half a tank, down to a quarter of a tank, down to empty. We don't make the car bad. We are not ashamed that the car has gone through the gas that was in the gas tank. We don't say things like, oh, my car really should have made it at least 50 more miles. We don't say things like, well, I know that there's only a 500-mile capacity in the car, but I really think that it probably should have gone 700 miles. We don't do that. There's no emotionality. We just accept the fact that either the tank is empty or the tank is full or the tank is somewhere in the middle. We don't judge it or make it bad. And if we can get away from judging or making bad what our physical capacity is, it's really freeing. Now, here's what I mean by that. If you're tired, the answer is not coffee. The answer is rest. So when I was at this conference last week in Boise, it was really interesting for me to think about how I used to conference versus how I conference now. How I used to conference was I almost treated the conference as though I had this is embarrassing. I almost treated it as though I had the opportunity to earn a gold star for like 100% attendance or something. So I attended everything all the time. I remember the last time I spoke at this conference when I was living in Idaho, that I went to the speech or the breakout room or whatever that happened right before my own. I didn't even take 15 minutes for myself because I felt like I had to show up for everything compared to this conference I just came back from last week. I only did the things that I had capacity for. So that meant that I took the entire hour before each of my talks to do breath work, to center myself, to meditate, to make sure my tech was set up and aligned, to make sure I was connected to the internet. And so everything worked so that when the conference attendees walked into my session, I had full capacity for them. It was really interesting to observe the change because now that I'm honoring my body's capacity, I have so much more capacity. I have so much more to give. And so I invite you to also honor your body's capacity. And one of the things I hear, it's kind of an objection sometimes. I'll hear people say, well, I can't because of fill in the blank. Usually it has something to do with I have to get my kids to this thing, or my job says I have to do this thing. And I just invite you to think for just a moment, does it have to be that way? Maybe it does. But what would it be like if you could just offer a little curiosity? Does it have to be that way? Is there a way that you might be able to change how much time something is taking? Could you add a little time? Could you ask for help? Could you ask, maybe if it's driving your kids around, could you ask for another parent whose kids are in the event if you can start a carpool? If it's your boss, could you let your boss know how you are spread thin physically and with your mental bandwidth and just ask, I need some more time. I need some more support on this. And here's what that would look like. Now, here's the thing. All of this, the 3 discoveries that I made, number 1, no one's coming to save you. Number 2, energy has no walls. Number 3, your body has a physical capacity. All of that's for naught unless you understand this next point. So if you're multitasking, invitation to come back to me because this one is really, really, really important. There's one way that we can solve all of this, and it's so simple. Not necessarily easy, but simple. Are you ready? The way that we can solve this, the way that we can reclaim our own nervous system capacity, the way that we can make sure we have the bandwidth to show up for the fullness of life that we really want is boundaries. Boundaries are the how-to guide for you. They're about a lot more than just, quote, setting boundaries. Boundaries are the way that you manage expectations. Boundaries are the way that you can protect your time, your bandwidth, your mental space. Boundaries are the way that you communicate with people you love to let them know what you need, what you want, and what you're willing to tolerate. It doesn't push people away, it brings them closer. In fact, boundaries help foster closeness in relationships because they help build trust. So here's the thing, back to number one. If you find yourself in a state that is exhausted, depleted, burned out, resentful, the only one who can shift that is you. Now, I know that you are someone who takes radical responsibility for what's showing up in your life. I also know you are someone with a heart of gold and that you really value being of service to the people you serve, whether that's your kids or your students or your communities or your patients. I know that you really value that service. I want to help you do whatever it is that you do more easily. I want to help you learn how to set better boundaries. And so I'm offering a free masterclass, ironically, on on Mental Health Day on October 12th. So, invitation to register for Boundary Brilliance on October 12th. It's at 9 a.m. Pacific, and there is going to be a limited time replay. And it just seems fitting that we're talking about boundaries on Mental Health Day because you know what also gets better when you set better boundaries? Your mental health. So, why me? Why would you come to this workshop by me? Well, I help sensitive and successful people find, reclaim, and live from their full bodied yes through empowering my clients to understand what's theirs and what's not, creating the boundaried yes and guiding them to full capacity living. My clients are able to create their own yes filled lives and move through their days with more freedom, ease, and joy. Now, to register for Boundary Brilliance, I'll put the link in the show notes, or you can just go to brendawinkle.com/boundary brilliance. And the subtitle of this, I really love: Deep Connection and Personal Empowerment for the Sensitive and Successful. So this masterclass is for you if you are successful and good at what you do. And you're starting to notice yourself saying things like, I have to keep my energy up. I don't know how much more of this I can take. I'm eating my feelings. This is taking a toll on me, or I just have to get through this part. This masterclass is for you if you feel resentful towards people or situations you used to love. It's for you if you're relying on numbing to get through the week, whether that means alcohol, sugar, zoning out on Netflix, or social media. It's for you if you have a short fuse and you can go from calm to infuriated with the snap of a finger. It's for you if you have an exhaustion that sleep won't help. It's for you if you feel angry a lot of the time and if things feel kind of unfair. It's for you if you don't feel like your relationships are reciprocal and you know you're overgiving. It's for you if you put other people's needs in front of your own all the time. And it's for you if you just don't feel good a lot of the time. In this masterclass, we're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about how to set a boundary without creating conflict. And spoiler alert, we don't set boundaries to avoid conflict, but I'm going to show you how to minimize that conflict. And I'll show you how setting the boundary can actually prevent conflict. Number two, the thing you must stop doing to make your boundaries really stick, and the essential thing to start. doing. And number 3, the energy shift that makes setting boundaries so much easier. And we'll also talk about, because this is probably one of your questions, what to do if someone isn't respecting a boundary. So I'm very excited about this masterclass. I hope to see you there. As always, I'm going to include some breath work because I think it's just so important. So register at the link in the show notes or go to brendawinkle.com/boundary brilliance. Now, one of the things that I became aware of recently was that some people feel a little uncomfortable about showing up to free masterclass after free masterclass, which, first of all, that's part of my outreach, and I'm happy to offer them. But if you'd be more comfortable paying, I also have a pay what you want option for this masterclass where you can put in a dollar amount from zero to whatever you want, if that would make you feel good. And I'm so excited about this because I know that when more people are setting healthier boundaries, you're going to have so much increased capacity. Things in your life are going to show up in beautiful ways that you absolutely cannot imagine. How do I know this? Because when I got good at setting boundaries, I had a lot more energy. You know what? One of the biggest distractions for so many of us that are sensitive and successful? Other people's problems. We get involved in ways we haven't been asked, and we spend our time and bandwidth thinking about ways that we can help people, and they don't even want it. In fact, that's another sign you need better boundaries. So come join me for the free masterclass. And if you're working in the day, still register for the masterclass, and then you can catch the replay, which I'll email out in 24 hours, and it'll time out so you can watch it over your weekend. It is a limited time replay, so you will want to watch it pretty fast, but you'll have it for at least a couple weeks. Thank you so much for listening to Your Yes Filled Life. It is truly a pleasure and an honor to be here with you and to have you listen. I take your listenership very, very seriously and honor it. If there are topics that you would love to hear about on Your Yes Filled Life, would you either DM me on Instagram at Brenda Winkle or send me an email, brenda@brendawinkle.com. And I would love to jam on your requested topics. If you haven't yet left the podcast a rating or a review, I would love to ask, could you please go do that right now? The more ratings and reviews a podcast has, the more likely it is to show up in the feed of someone who really needs it. It's the number one thing you can do to help the podcast grow, besides doing this next thing, which is sharing this episode. If you liked this episode and you know someone who you love that you think could benefit from it, would you please share it with them? Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now. Until next time.